Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, May the 24th regular meeting of Council. I'll now call this meeting to order, and for those that are able, please stand for our national anthem.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawandurunk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. There are no proclamations this evening. Adoption of the agenda. If I can have Councillors Bagu and Clayliff move that. Any questions on the agenda? All in favor? That's carried. Disclosures of interest. I have one councillor that's declared so far, Councillor Beauregard, with items 8.3 and 20.1. Any further conflicts? Okay. Approval of the minutes. It's going to have to be approval of the minutes as amended. I'm going to go to Madam Clerk before I call on the movers for this.
Thank you, Your Worship. There will be an amendment to section 6.1 and section 13 of the May 10th minutes with regards to Councillor Bodner's conflict of interest. It will read that the conflict is due to the ownership of the store in Shirkston only.
Okay, Councillor? Good. So if I can have Councillors Desmarais and Beauregard move that. Are there any questions on the minutes? All those in favor? That's carried. And those were at the regular meeting of May the 10th. So at this time, we have items 8.1, 8.3, 8.4, 8.5, and 9.4 being pulled. Are there any further items? Seeing none, if I can have Councillors Danch and Bruno move the remainder of the items. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have one delegation this evening. No presentations, one delegation. This is regards to Anton Plitko, request to receive exemption from bylaw 5383/137/09 and relief from recharge to tax account. Tim Payne will be representing Mr. Plitko. He's the property manager, and he is here virtually. And Mr. Plitko, again, owns 344 Fairs Street. Mr. Pine, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, you can go ahead.
So I just wanted to follow up on a letter that was given to Anton on February the 10th. It's in regards to a sidewalk clearing issue. On February 7th, a city officer inspected the property and observed a violation. Anton is living in Mississauga, I believe it is. He was given the order on February the 10th. He immediately contacted myself. I contacted both the tenants. The tenants assured me that they had cleared the property. One of the tenants actually said that he called the city because he believed it was a bus route and that the city should have been clearing the sidewalk. But when he was also told that if he cleared an 18-inch path, that would be sufficient. On February the 11th, according to the letter that was sent to Anton, the city officers came back, said there was still snow covering the sidewalk. Though the pictures they sent don't show us any dates. On April the 19th, he received a letter from the city informing that the amount of $848.63 had been added to his tax account. And I guess there are two or three things that he's saying here. He's saying, first of all, the city failed to provide any invoice from the vendor indicating the amount the city is adding to his tax bill. They did provide him with a web page that showed snow and ice removal fee of $11 per meter. And when looking at the photos, it doesn't look like there was anywhere near the amount that the 848 would add up to for the amount of snow. Again, he said the city representatives were not able to comment or explain why someone had said that it was a bus route and continued to charge him. So I guess in essence, he's just looking for this issue to get resolved and clear the 848.63 from his tax bill.
Great, thank you, Mr. Pine. Are there any questions to the presenter? No questions? Okay, Mr. Pine, thank you very much for your delegation. Council does not have any questions at this time.
Okay.
Are there any questions to staff? Councillor Bruno.
Sorry, thank you. Through you to Chief Lawson. With respect to bus route and bylaw, is that not a moot point? In other words, if we receive a complaint or we proactively deal with snow on a sidewalk, the issue of a bus route, is that actually relevant, or are we somehow obligated to clear bus route sidewalks? I had not heard of that through the years. Thank you.
Through the mayor to council, Councillor, you are correct. This is a moot point, whether it's a bus route or not. The owner of the property is responsible for clearing the sidewalk in front of their property.
Okay. Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Chief Lawson. Also, the matter of the 18 inches, that doesn't seem like a lot of space to be able to walk through, and I find it odd that that would be in the bylaw, is it?
Chief?
Through the mayor to council, I do not believe it is written that way. It's supposed to be cleared from edge to edge.
Okay, so staff
if
would
we had
like,
somebody.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Go
Back
ahead.
through the mayor to council. If we had somebody with a walking aid device, we know that 18 inches would not be enough for that person. And we know we have those people in our community that need that assistance. Our staff would definitely not say 18 inches would cover that.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Further questions to staff? Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Scott. There was it said that the photos weren't time stamped. Is that, I mean, it seems like a good thing to have them time stamped somehow. If we got into, some legal thing, is that something we normally do, or is that not even a thing?
Chief Lawson.
Through the mayor to council, I mean, it's something that could be due. Officers are going to rely on their notes 100%, and those pictures are more of an ancillary device if we went to court that we could prove. But it's our notes that are going to show the dates, times, and our actions. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Our notes are probably worth 2,000.
Good, thanks.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beauregard.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Chief Lawson. So one thing that concerns me is that there's the owner of the property saying that he didn't get the order the date that it was inspected. It was told that he has to do it by the 10th, and he received it on the 10th. Is that correct?
Chief Lawson.
Through the mayor to council. So there is a delay. This resident does not live in town, so there is always going to be a delay when we serve that through express mail. The original order or inspection was done on the 7th. It was mailed out on the 8th. The person picked it up on the 10th. So we're already 3 days past that 24 hours that we're supposed to be clearing our sidewalks. We re-inspected on the 11th, and we actually sent it to our contractor on the 12th. I can show you on time stamps that the owner of that property picked it up on the 10th at 9 a.m. and we didn't clear that sidewalk till the 12th at, I believe it was noon. So there's over 48 hours between when he got that notice and that sidewalk was still not cleared.
Councillor.
Through your worship, so was the order only given directly to the owner? It doesn't go like on the door or at all?
Chief? Through the mayor to council. This is a fairly simple order. It's mailed out.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cleo.
Through you, Mr. Mayor to Chief. The owner said that he had spoken with some of the tenants and they had done some cleaning. Was that a previous time or was it this time? Like, it didn't look like it was very well cleared, and I wondered who had done that.
Chief.
Through the mayor to council, I mean, to me that's going to be hearsay. I don't know who shoveled it. I can go off the person that's representing the owner that it could have been the tenant, but you can see it in our pictures that it was not done to any
properly.
Decent standard that we would expect in our city.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Further questions? Okay. Again, Mr. Pine, thank you for your delegation this evening. There's nothing.
Thank you.
There's nothing further from council. Okay, can I get a motion to receive? Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Beauregard. Any questions? This is to receive the delegation. All those in favor, raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. On to the mayor's report. The sweetest event of the year returns to the Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum and Arabella's Tea Room on Sunday, May the 29th from 12 noon to 4 p.m. It's the 38th annual Arabella's Pie Social and History Fair, and it encourages the Port Colborne community to enjoy a slice of homemade pie with a hot or cold beverage at Arabella's Tea Room before or after a walk through the museum grounds where traditional heritage is on display with live demonstrations, exhibits, and entertainment. Pie and beverages are served in Arabella's Tea Room by reservation only. To make a reservation, call 905-834-7604 or email museum@portcolborne.ca. Some additional activities taking place in the museum grounds include discovery of traditional skills at the Niagara Antique Power demonstration and museum blacksmith shop. They're going to do a heritage demonstration. Children's activities, perennial plant sale, and live piano performance by musician Frank Cron. Arabella's Tea Room opens for the season Wednesday, June the 1st, and operates daily from 2 to 4 until September the 30th. June will be celebrating the nationally acclaimed months, these are nationally acclaimed months. First off is in June we commemorate National Indigenous History Month. During this month, take time to recognize the rich history, heritage, resilience, and diversity of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people across Canada. June is Pride Month. On Monday, May the 30th, I'll raise the Pride flag at City Hall, along with Pride Niagara in recognition and celebration of the LGBTQ2+ community. In September 2021, the city unveiled its Rainbow Crosswalk on the corner of West and Clarence Streets to celebrate and support inclusivity of the LGBTQ2+ community. On June the 1st at 10 a.m., I'll be raising the Age-Friendly Niagara and City of Port Colborne flag for the month of June to recognize and honor the seniors in our community. To learn more about the Port Colborne Senior Citizens Advisory Committee, the theme for Seniors Month, and services available for seniors in Port Colborne, We ask you to visit www.portcolborne.ca/seniors. The the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee will also have a booth set up every Friday in June at the Port Colborne Farmers Market. June is Recreation and Parks Month. What better time than now to get active and take advantage of all the facilities, amenities, events, and programs here in the city of Port Colborne. The Port Colborne Resident Participate Pass can now be used for additional incentives such as free skating at the Valley Health and Wellness Center. Check our website for dates and programs available. The YMCA will also be offering the following free programs as part of the Participate Pass initiative. Pickleball on June 3rd from 1 to 4, 13 plus years. Open swim on June the 11th from 12:30 to 1:30 and 2 to 3, that's all ages. Outdoor yoga class on June 28th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. at HH Knoll Lakeview Park, that's 13 years and older. Open family gym on June the 19th from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, all ages. Reminder, the Participate Pass also grants Port Colborne residents free access to Port Colborne's 2 public beaches, Nickel Beach and Centennial Cedar Bay Beach. Still need a Participate Pass? Visit www.portcolborne.ca/Participate Pass or call 905-835-2900 and speak to one of our customer service representatives. Let's all get out and participate in June. We'll be holding our second Clean Community Day on Saturday, June the 11th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Engineering and Operations Center North Parking Lot, 1 Kalali Street West. Our first Clean Community Day saw over 70 households clean up 4,400 kilograms of waste. Take a look around your property over the next couple of weeks and see if there's anything that needs to be disposed of and be ready for June 11th. To learn more about the Clean Community Project, including a complete list of items you can and cannot bring, go to www.portcolborne.ca/Clean Community Project. And the City of Port Colborne welcomes nonprofit organizations and service clubs serving the needs of residents of Port Colborne to apply for a discretionary grant based on the provisions included in the granting policy. The next round of applications are due by Thursday, June the 30th. To learn more about the grant policy, or to download the application, visit www.portcolborne.ca/community grants. That ends my mayor's report. Please thank you for that, and please stay safe out there. Questions on the mayor's report? Seeing none, and Councillor Butters is away, so she won't be attending tonight. Are there any regional questions? Okay, Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to thank Councillor Butters, but you can pass that on, and I think you were probably involved in this. I sent out an email about the lack of cutting prior to the holiday weekend of regional properties, road edges, traffic islands, similarly with MTO and with the Seaway. Received an email late at night from our regional manager, and the region responded the next day and did all that. So I wanted to thank Councillor Butters, you, if you could pass that on, and staff and yourself or whoever else was involved, Director Kawamoto, with dealing with the Seaway and the one MTO island by McDonald's. All were cleaned up by Friday night leading into the holiday weekend. So I thank them all for the fast and quick action and the response. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor, and Chris, I know you and your staff worked hard on that, but quite frankly, between council and our staff creating these partnerships with the other 3 levels that we have to deal with, things that have gotten a lot better than they were in the past, and you noted that Ms. Rael responded to you after hours, got it cleaned up the next day. The Seaway came in right away, the MTO came in right away. I think all the moons aligned in the sun that evening, so it was good. But it takes a lot of people to do that, and a lot of phone calls and emails. So kudos goes out to everybody. And the chief was in on that too. There you go, the chief. So I think he threatened some tickets, and they got down here pretty quick. So thank you, Councillor. But no, it's good, and I'll make sure Councillor Butters, when I see her at the next regional council meeting, I'll pass that along. Any further questions for the region? Seeing none. Staff remarks. Are there any staff remarks inside here? Nothing online. Ms. Landry or Mr. Schultz, I don't think you guys have anything. You're here for a different item. But okay. Councillors' items, I'm going to start with my left. Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering whether Mr. Kalamoto might be able to give us some information on Forks Road East that is being paved. And it's being paved part way. And while we have all the equipment out there and doing everything, thinking that we couldn't go just to the end of it, while we got everything there. We will be doing that at some point. So I just wondered whether there's some info.
Mr. Kalamoto?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if that's a direction of council, that we will happily do that. We do, because our contract was awarded in 2020 and it's a multi-year contract, there are limited escalations within that contract. So we currently still have some very good pricing, although everything else has increased, including asphalt. So, but because staff have went out and got that contract, we do have some money in the budget. That cost for that area is approximately $50,000. So if there is a direction or a motion for council, staff will be happy to do that.
Councillor?
Well, I think because we have the good cost on paving and everything, that we'll never be able to pave it for that price again. And while we're there, I'd be happy to make a motion that we finish the job to the end of the road while we got everything going.
Okay. Councillor Wells, will you second that? Yes. Great. So we have a motion on the floor that we direct staff to complete the remainder of the road from Snyder Road west to the end. That won't include the cul-de-sac though, correct? In the pricing, we just go to the end and leave the cul-de-sac as stone?
That is correct. That pricing just includes to the end of the road and not the loop at the end.
Okay. All right, councillors. Is that fine at this time? I'll take questions if you want. Yeah. Is that all right as far as that? Okay. Questions on this motion? Councillor?
In regards to the motion, there are some concerns in regards to the cul-de-sac, if you will, and why that would not be paved as well, because it does lead to some issues at the end. The expectation is that when you're going down the paved road, it doesn't run out so that you can turn around and come back. And if you look at the end of Snyder Road, you'll see that the damage on the cul-de-sac and potential for being stuck there. So I would just encourage that if we can find the money to do the cul-de-sacs, we should do the cul-de-sacs. That'll also eliminate any breakup on the edge of the road where it ends coming into the cul-de-sac.
Mr. Kalamoto?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, depending on the condition of that road, we may be able to fit that in. However, on Snyder, as an example, it would need a full reconstruction just because of the soil and the degradation of that area. So that would be a much more expensive fix. If the cul-de-sac at the end of Forks Road East is not in as bad condition, and if the ground conditions are better, we should be able to fit that in, but I wouldn't want to promise that depending on the conditions. So if it is, we will fit that in.
Okay. Aside from doing the paving, we would normally, would your staff go in and stone those areas once the paving is done to fix those areas after normal winter?
We can definitely take a look at putting some stone down at the end of Snyder. And if it is the similar case at the end of Forks, we can do the same. If Forks is in better condition, we should be able to pave, but again, depending on the condition of that. So again, I can't promise everything, but if it is in good condition and it is just a shape and pave, we should be able to fit that in.
Okay. Councillor, is that all right for the end of Forks?
For the end of Forks, yes. The end of Snyder Road is already paved, but the fresh paving that was done just stopped.
No, but I mean, as far as the cul-de-sac goes at the end, because of the conditions, he thinks it's going to be too costly? As long as we go in and stone it, which would be our normal practice? Is that all fine?
That's fine for the end of Forks Road, but I was just going to make a correction that Snyder Road is paved all around the cul-de-sac.
Oh, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. However, again, the degradation at the end of Snyder would need a full reconstruction,
Okay.
full re, so it's much more involved than potentially at the end of Fork. So again, it is paved, but just the degradation and the soil conditions there, it would need more than just the straight shave and pave. That is what we're doing on Snyder. So it would take a lot more, because we'd have to dig through the base and et cetera, which we didn't have to do on the rest of Snyder. Now, if it is the same condition at the end of Forks, that would be a much larger cost. If, however, the degradation is less than at the end of Snyder, we should be able just to do a shave and pave.
Okay. Is that all right then, councillors? Okay. All right. Councillor Borgard?
Through your worship to Director Kawamoto. Before we go with paving, there wouldn't be any reason why that paving area would have to be dug up or for any other kinds of works. Just go ahead.
Mr. Kawamoto?
Yep. Through the mayor to the councillor, at this time, I can't foresee anything else needing, at least in the next number of decades, for that to be ripped up and reconstructed, especially at that end of Forks. Just to note, however, the infrastructure needs study that is going to be reported on later on this summer does include both growth and degradation of all of the assets, including roads, water, sewer, and storm. So as we move forward with that report, that will be included in the calculation for replacement. So yes, thank you for asking. That has not been done quite as yet in that particular area. There should be no concern, and it will be included in the analysis from here on in as we get the infrastructure needs study.
Okay, councillor. Further questions? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, Councillor Bodnar. Go ahead, next item. You're all done? So all done? Finished? Councillor Clayoff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to everyone, actually. We were just talking about the fact that on Sunday we held a special celebration. It was Museum Week, and as well we celebrated Bill Thomas at Roselawn, and he was presented with the key to the city for all of his work in refurbishing, with being involved with Roselawn over the years, all of the things. It was a wonderful history lesson, because I said to him, I started going to Roselawn 52 years ago, and I fell in love with it that day, and it's been an ongoing love of mine. So I was really pleased to see him there and see him get the award. He was very pleased, and Stephanie did a great job talking about Roselawn and the museum and everything else that's going on in the city, and it was nice. But just to let everyone know that he did receive it, and he was very appreciative of it.
Councillor?
Just to that point, did your parents take you in the baby carriage 52 years ago? Just wondering.
No, Miss Baldelli
You're all set, councillor? All set? Councillor Danch.
Yeah, just two quick points for me this evening. Had a couple young ladies stop by on their bicycles the other morning with a little mechanical breakdown. I think it was 2 6mm bolts, and we had them on their way. But they did say that the trail from Fort Erie to Port Colborne was probably the best trail that they've ever been on. They were going to Michigan, and they were from way into the States, but these two girls just said that our trail was the best. So I guess kudos to you guys for your paving and lining and all that kind of stuff. So that's item one. Item two, I think, is to the chief there. Some parking on Main Street there around the 380 Main West, close to the church. The vehicles seem to be parked on the road overnight hours on end. Had a couple small complaints. I realize the church is there, and those things go on Saturdays and Sundays, and unfortunately the funerals and whatnot, but just wonder if we could maybe look into some of the timelines on some of the vehicles parked on the road there. there's not a lot of parking on Main Street, and some seem to get it and some not to, but if maybe Scott could look into that, I appreciate it. That's all I have for tonight, thank
Okay,
you.
Chief Lawson?
Through the mayor to council, we can definitely look into that. I'm not 100% sure that's a regional road, so I'll have to look into seeing if we can actually enforce ourselves, or we're gonna have to talk to the region about that. But we'll get that done.
Yeah, just CC Councillor Butters and I on that if you're gonna send it up to Carolyn Royale. Okay, thanks, Council. Councillor Borgard? Okay, Councillor Baggio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't have anything initially, but FYI for my fellow councilors, today I sent an email to Director Kalamutu and Director Bowles regarding some signage. I sort of stepped over the ward boundaries. I went to Ward 4.
That's okay.
And only because I travel out there to see my granddaughters. But there's a lot of signage on the side of the roads again, commercial businesses, and I requested that they take a look at it, and they got back to me within 2 hours and saying they'd send somebody out there and check it out. So I do appreciate that, Director. And the other director I know is a little ill. But the other point, Mr. Mayor, is last Thursday, May 19th, we had our first Port Colborne Downtown Cruisers Association cruise night. It was well received. A lot of beautiful cars, trucks, and a lot of residents walking around, and we really, I think they really appreciated coming out for over 2 years and seeing these beautiful vehicles again. Everybody had lots of time to shine up their cars over 2 years. And they're extra shiny for cruise night. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I was up at the region from 4 o'clock till after 9, so I when I came back into town, I missed it. I missed everything, and I look forward to the next one we get out to. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I wanted to come back to the issue I mentioned earlier about road cutting, grass cutting, with respect to those three entities. I probably could ask a fourth, the rail, but I won't dip into that one tonight. I guess what I'm concerned about is in some of the dialogue going on about that, yes, it was a holiday weekend, yes, it's the entry, but what really came out of that was, and I'm not sure about the region, so Mr. Calamone, you might have to correct me on this, but certainly the Seaway and the MTO, even cutting the grass is so infrequent. So whilst we did get it to happen for this weekend, you know, if they do 3 cuts a year, or, you know, the region does 8, and, you know, we do 14, there's still going to be a vast inequity there. So I'm just wondering whether it be in a report or just an update. I mean, there's the opportunity to come to an agreement with them, but even with an agreement, if we switch off, I mean, you know, if those entities are cutting, you know, 1/3 of the amount of time we are, or even 1/2, it's just never going to look great, and it's never going to be in sync where our maintenance intersects with their maintenance. So I don't know if you could maybe espouse to me what your plan might be on that, and are we really going to be looking at, if we can't get them to cut more frequently, a cost factor that the city, and we'll have to make a decision if that's the level of service we want. Thank you.
Mr. Kawamoto?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the council and all of council. Obviously, the first thing we would try to do is raise their level of service to our expectations. Again, as they are different entities, we don't have any stick or carrot to hold over them, other than asking nicely and letting them understand what our expectations are. After that, if that doesn't work, then we move on to some sort of an agreement, and whether that be an agreement with regard to trading off certain areas where we cut, where they cut, et cetera, and then the third option would be a monetary agreement. And so right now we're looking at the first option, and actually we're really heading into the second option, unfortunately, with some of these entities. So what we are looking at are an exchange of services first, and then if we have to, if there is no option for their services, then we might have to move into monetary. So that's currently where we are now. We have been successful at getting one of those organizations to move from, I believe it was every 3 weeks, every 2 weeks, with some of their cutting. And that was a fairly successful discussion between city staff and that particular organization. However, we are having slightly more difficult time on the other organizations. So as we do speak with them, we will be moving to that second option fairly quickly.
I guess I'm just wondering if you can provide me with an update, because I'm sure as much as it's getting that email means you have to react to them, I have to react to you, and if we could head that off, I'd rather not be standing up here on the soapbox about that or on email. So if you could perhaps just give us or me a ongoing update on the success, failure, or when we're going to hear something different, that would be great. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. There is a new, he's been with the Seaway, but he's in a new position, which properties is part of his portfolio. Gary's been dealing with him on other issues, but we'll, because the young lady that we were dealing with is now left. She's now working for the city of Welland. So we just want to make sure that that file has been passed on. So we'll get a hold of Mr. Carey's and see where it sits. So we'll work with Chris on that, because we started that just prior to Chris coming here. So we can talk to him. We'll make sure that Gary, Scott, and I and Chris get on a phone call again with them, just see where they are with it. Because verbally, what they said earlier is, they're willing to work with us. My comment was, well, let us do it. Whatever you would normally pay for your conditions, pay us, and then we want to bring it up to standards. It's our dime. So if we wanted to do 5 cuts a year as opposed to 3 cuts a year, or whatever it may be, then we would pick up the difference. But then we get a property that looks better than what we traditionally don't like to see, the way that it grows and grows and grows, and finally got to be calling all the time to see what happens. So we'll continue that with Chris and Gary, Scott, and I. Okay, thank you. Councillor Demery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of items this evening. First, though, I would like to comment on what Councillor Baggy was saying about the downtown cruise lane. That is just spectacular, and it truly lights up the city. So it's just like the summer has launched when you see those cars line up, and there was a lot of action on the street. So it was great to see. Move from that to actually a couple of compliments that I've gotten recently from different people in the city and a couple of people from outside of the city, commenting on how socially progressive our city has become and how they really think that is it's a major step forward for Port Colborne, and they would like to live in a city like that. So that's kind of nice, and I mentioned it to the mayor on the weekend that it's good to hear that kind of thing, and it's important that we stay in that direction and make it more than about bricks and mortar and pavement. So it was just a good thing. So now I would like to actually move into something that I've talked about a lot of times over the years. No clear answer to this, but just maybe a comment to the public in general, and that's fireworks. I spent a really rough weekend with a traumatized dog, and that's not bad when it's a little dog, but this is a 140-pound dog, so it's a little bit different than that. So we now have a few more scratches and some doors and that sort of thing, but I understand the beauty of watching fireworks. I truly do. I think there's great value in having communities let off those fireworks and having a celebration where people gather. I don't, however, think it's a good idea for neighborhoods to just a couple of families to get together and throw fireworks around the neighborhood. And I really think it's an even worse idea to just throw things around that bang and have no color at all. It's just a matter of making a lot of noise. If you want to do that, get a pot or something and a stick and go to your basement. Because it really is very frustrating. People with PTSD are really suffering through these weekends. People that have young children are also having a rough time through these weekends. And without a doubt, people with animals, also a lot of seniors. So a great number of the population are affected by these. I just ask that people would use their common sense, common decency, and have a little respect for the people around them. So, and if possible, call the fire department if you think anything bad is going on. If there's, if there's something going on that you think that could be a fire or somebody's going to get hurt, call them. It's tough with the people who are just going around banging things because they're usually gone by the time you get there, and I understand that that's happened over the years too. But I just, it started again, so just wanted to bring that reminder forward. I know there's not lots we can do, but individually we can do a lot. So there is that. The other thing is, and I've noticed this, I'm going to reach out to staff for this and ask, do we have any kind of procedure for dealing with pop-up pools, hot tubs, that sort of thing? You know, not the ones that people come in to get a permit for, but the ones that they're going and buying at Canadian Tire or Costco or something, putting up in their backyard, and there's no fence around them, and there's just nothing stopping neighborhood kids from wandering in and going in, or animals from falling in, that sort of thing. But they create a danger, and I just wonder if we have some kind of procedure that we would follow. Do we go and check for these things? How do we deal with them?
Chief Lawson?
Through the mayor to council, the best way to do it is lodge your complaint. Please go through citywide, and then it gets recorded, and staff will go and make sure that if there is a fence needed and there is an infraction, we'll take whatever necessary actions are to get that remedied.
Yeah, there is a pool bylaw which lays out those heights.
Okay, then thank you very much.
Okay. You're all set? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Walls?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Director Kawamoto, I'd like to send the compliments from the people on Snyder Road for having the road done. However, with that, they saw some opportunities for improvement in that area. And I think I sent you some pictures earlier today in regards to the road surface there. The road surface was raised about 40 millimeters above the natural shoulder of the road. And as a result of that being that high, anybody on a bicycle or pedestrians walking could suffer a personal injury because of the height drop down. The other thing is the characteristic of that road that was paved and that was there originally was basically a single lane road with very narrow shoulders, natural shoulders, and 2 ditches on either side. So there's no room for a car to pass on that road. And now if a car has to come off, it has to drop down that 40 millimeters, which is okay for trucks, but not for some cars. And the same thing with bicycles. Bicycles, when I went down there today, the bicycler that was on the road actually had to get off of the road onto the shoulder because he was concerned about the distance from the moving vehicle. So I guess I'm asking you at this point in time, is there anything that we can do in order to reduce the steepness or the quickness and sharpness of the drop-off of that road, and flattening it out or narrowing it out, or expanding out the shoulder of the road such that it provides a little bit of space for people or cars? Because some of the residents say that, there's a long distance. I'm going to say it's about half a kilometer from the beginning of the road to the first residence on that road. And if they meet a car coming down the other way, they have to back all the way back up to their driveway. And for some, it's okay, but for others, it's a challenge. So I was just wondering if there's anything we could look at doing in order to accommodate a smoother traffic flow and less potentials for any injuries.
Mr. Kawamoto?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, my apologies for not getting back to you on time before tonight. It is still a working construction zone, and what we will be doing is actually raising and extending the shoulders. So that will be done. It's a far away, and we just have not got there as of yet. It's usually a different crew that comes in versus the paving crew that had that. So that will be rectified before the end of that project.
Councillor?
That's great. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Nothing further than council. We'll get on to our staff reports this evening. Item 8.1 is the Port Colborne Historical Marine Museum 2021 Annual Report and Department Update. To get the recommendation on the floor that Department of Museum and Culture Report 2022-114 be received for information. If I could have Councillors Wells and Bodner move that. Mrs. Museum. Good evening.
Good evening.
Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Through your worship to council, always excited to be here, and some of you did my work for me earlier in the evening, so thank you for your announcements and sharing with everybody what the different Mays Museum Month things that you've been involved in are. I've got a presentation here that I'm going to present, but I also have some colleagues with me. If anyone has a question afterwards, I have the curator, Michelle Mason, with me, as well as Megan Chamberlain, who is our Community Engagement Officer. The Community Engagement Officer is a new role that's a one-year contract, and it's really helping us to liaise with our Friends of Roselawn, as well as our Museum Auxiliary, and all of the community partners that we're having. So our Department of Museum and Culture is existing now with the Museum, Heritage Village, Marine Park, Archives, Arabella's Tea Room, and of course the Roselawn Center. We have a working vision here that we just worked together through with CAO Scott Louie and Gary's strategic planning team, as well as Greg. And right now it stands that we envision a heritage and cultural presence that serves our community by preserving and sharing the history and marine heritage of Port Colborne and Humberston. So a key difference in this one is that word culture. And so we're already moving forward thinking of ourselves as a larger department now, the Department of Museum and Culture, and how we can encompass more of Port Colborne. Here I've got a little bit of the Anchored in Success that is our template, and I really liked that because we actually have an anchor on our image board because we have one on the museum grounds. So the 2021 highlights really talks about that opportunity with the expansion. One of the very clever moves that was made early on is to include a Friends of Roselawn Center board member on our board so that we're all working in unison, and that happened, actually it was official in January, but Arlene Lassard started joining us right away in October of last year. Of course, our COVID response and recovery, we really, again, pivoted, were creative, and did a great job last year. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when I talk about the annual report, but one of the outcomes of this has been that we opened all year long last year. So we were open from January to December, which is something we haven't been able to do before, and we used our Book a Safe service, so we call that BAS. Everything was able to be done. We had hybrid, we had take-home, we had in-person, we had tours, speaker series, everything that people have come to really appreciate about our community museum, we were able to participate in. Key in the success of last year, more than I can remember, were the partnerships. So again, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more in depth when we go over the annual report, but I see this as something that's going to be even going to our future as well. We're going to keep continuing to be a success. So it's a theme you'll hear through my presentation about the importance of the partnerships. And as we get our annual report, I just want to let you know that this is a long report, and I'm very aware of Council's time and appreciate that. So I'm just going to zip through this, which you've probably already had a presentation. But one of the first pages there, Preserve, which is serve and preserve, which are two themes at the museum, is really the first images of our Mays Museum Month last year. We used a fun activity with our artifacts and archives for an I Spy, and that's where you see our captain there with some early artifacts. And the next slide, really, I wanted to talk about the idea of growth. So even though we were dealing with some new challenges, it was an opportunity when things are changed to grow. And one of the projects that we did was the Diversity Garden, Digging for Roots Diversity Garden, very well received. And this is a thank you that we gave to our artists. They were actual seeds. So not only was it symbolic, but it was literal as well. And on the next slide, if you just go to the next one, you'll see that we are talking again about our mission. So this is our original mission. I just wanted to include that in so you could see the change, or we could skip by that. But it continues with Marine, Port Colborne, and Humberston. Those are our themes. That's our community. Now this image is of our carriage house, and although I used it for our capital project, you can't see the roof. We did have our cedar shake roofs repaired last year, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the partnership with operations. We've been working so great with that department in terms of getting the priorities listed, getting the quotes, getting the jobs done, and we were able to repair all of the cedar roofs in our grounds last year. So not having as many people on the grounds during the day was a perfect opportunity to get this done. So when people asked me, what did you do last year? I had a great answer, and that was one of the ones that Mason Thomas helped us with, his team. The letter from the chairman really just is an echo of what I'm saying. One, the opportunities that were afforded by that expansion with Roselawn are something that the board is looking forward to. And secondly, that the partnerships are so important in the successes that we had. Brian Heaslip, who is our chairman right now, and the vice chairman, Terry Huffman, both really have led through this change of how we do business, and we've been able to find opportunities that have made us even better at what we do. So we're looking forward to those opportunities and going further with them. Now, the next few slides are going to be a lot of numbers and things like that, but I'm only going to point out a few of them that I think are most interesting. The first one is the total visitors, which is 6,378. That was in person and virtual. 3 years ago, I came here and we had 19,000. But the year after that, it was only 1,367. So we really learned how to fix what the problems were and how to reach our community. And we're continuing to do that even better now. Another image there, the 13, we added something to our structures. So we were really happy to get the propeller added to our collection. So one of our larger artifacts, and that came from Algoma. We did that on International Museums Day of last year. So that's another one. On the next slide, some of the things I want to feature are really just about how well we did with our increase in our social media, our website visits, because many people were going onto those forums to get our information or to connect. We put a lot of energy into that with a YouTube channel. Our Facebook went up 45% from the year before in terms of subscribers, as well as the online exhibits and the page views for the Port Colborne Museum. So we're really finding that the city's webpage is a great way for us to connect. And of course, working with the comms team, who always include us in all of the communications and the videos that are done. On the next slide, financials. I know that everyone here is very interested in our financials. And some interesting things just to talk about is, one, you can see our admissions or our fundraising and admissions really were supported by partnerships. So Lower Lakes Towing was one of our Canal Days sponsors, as well as our Sea Shanty project that we did for Canal Days, which was an online project with musicians. That was, again, sponsored by a local industry. Our memberships were also sponsored. So that was, we thought maybe some people were having a hard time right now, but how can we keep them involved? And luckily somebody stepped up, and that's also happening this year. So that was another great way. You can see our special events were really reliant on grants, provincial, regional, federal, every aspect. We were getting grants to support all of our. So each of those 5 events all had support through financial grants. And then, of course, our staffing. We were able to have a very large contingent last year to go through all these programs and changes. And we were happy to be able to use grants for all of those as well. I will be taking questions at the end if there is any more information. So you can see here this pie is very interesting because education and outreach was our largest area of reaching. So that's to somebody who's in charge of the curator, that's a great thing that you're reaching, especially in a year that it's hard to connect with. You can see a picture of our membership chair there, Claudia, who is very happy that our memberships increased during the pandemic. So those free memberships got people really interested and signed up, and we're just going to hold on to them. Our volunteers, we were very creative about having volunteers. If we were able to have them outside, they came, they gardened, they painted, and by the end of the year, we were able to get them inside as well. Our staff, our board. So really the thing that I have to say really impresses me about Port Colborne as a community museum are that the board are dedicated, passionate, and good leaders, and the staff work right alongside them. So we have a great harmony, working really well with our cultural block partners, the library, and Susan and her team over there. And I think things are just getting gelled more and more, even within the city, with now tourism getting in, and we're all going by the same book. And I think that's in part because of the strategic plan the city has, and we're all following in as well. There's my staff. We were having our first tour of Roselawn on that day, so we got some refreshments with us. All the listed of all of our staff, I won't go through them, but you can see it's a whole page. And we're really pleased to be able to have such a big group that works along with the volunteers to run all of these programs I'm talking about. So the next 3 pages are really about the highlights, the online exhibits, etc. And I'll just mention a few of the new things. Our exhibits were still incorporated and enjoyed, with our newest being the Niagara Museum, which is in the Carriage House, and it features rural agricultural history, which is great, something that we are happy to do. We'll be able to have it as a permanent exhibit. As well, an online exhibit was added, and that was the graph weaving. So that's on Our Ontario. So we have several online exhibits now as well. And again, all of these things, all of these partnerships that we were able to do either with a grant or with our donors means that we were able to provide the information. So I'll let you just scroll through those next few, because I have page upon page of exhibits and activities, but you'll get to see a little peek of that beautiful exhibit that's now in the Carriage House, with some nice quotes there. Our programs in activities are very long. One of the things I would like to note was Arabella's Tea Room wasn't able to open. However, we did have a project through a grant that the auxiliary did to the Port Colborne for our tapestry project. So we were still able to engage our volunteers, keep them busy, and they did tapestries based on photographs. There's another picture of our grounds, which is very nice. Those hearts were given out at Valentine's Day to all of our volunteers, just to let them know, partnering with our local lavender store. Now, you can see a sea shanty, one of our sea shanties. That was one of my favorites. That was a sea shanty that was made specifically about the Welland Canal, a kids version one. So the next thing coming up was really just about what's going to be happening in 2022. I'm going to talk a little bit about that on my other slides, but you've covered quite a lot of it. And our services and facilities have only expanded. Except for the tea room not being able to open as they normally were able to, we were able to do every other service that we had. So our propeller coming in there, projects and publications. And then I just finish up with a nice picture of Jim Martin, who's our conservation volunteer. And we were able to get him a spot in our basement, so he had his own work to continue conserving our artifacts for Port Colborne. So that's essentially the annual report. I won't get into much about what we're doing now, because I'm going to go back to my slide presentation and just talk to you a little bit more about those important partnerships that I was talking about, where we are now and where we're moving forward. So on our Museum and Culture Deckhands in Action, we've done some great visioning sessions. The Friends of Roselawn Centre, the Lighthouse Theatre, the BIA, the Museum Auxiliary, as well as the board and city departments. Everybody sitting around. The strategic planning as well was done. Our research and heritage is still on focus in terms of making sure that we can get people in and enjoying our services, and really maintaining core services. So we want to continue to do everything that we do. Our partnerships have been to keep everything accessible, to keep everything safe. Every time we would have an event, we would just adjust how that event was done, and the staff did that really well. So walking tours, our speaker series, everything on that. One of the things we did is focus on our outdoors. So we had, our buildings all featured. We had a garden, heritage garden, and ecotourism officer. So we thought people are going to be outside. Let's feature and focus on that. The other picture over there is of the staff at the library's opening, which, again, just talking about our partnerships with the library. And the last slide really is talking about where we're going, propelling forward. So we're setting our goals, specific goals from our strategic plan. That's where we are right now. We're aligning with the priorities of the city's strategic plans, events and outreach, and of course, you've heard a lot about May is Museum Month. We will now be, our next event or community that we're trying to reach into is because our curator speaks French. We've applied for a Francophone community grant, and we're looking at trying to get funds available to do the oral histories and a film series. As well, this summer, we'll be seeing at Roselawn and the museum outreach coordinator having workshops on shadow boxes, as well as plein air painting. So activities are all happening. I don't have to go into some of the things we did because you already talked about, but it's been great in May to be able to open our doors at all of our facilities, as well as keeping a broader reach on the arts community and culture, talking about, sculptures and how that would fit in public. So working with other colleagues on that kinds of things. So that ends my presentation. I do have a very cute little image there at the end from the Archives of Ontario, and it's a Witchman plate of a little child that's scared of a chicken, and they said, don't be chicken, go to the Archives conference, and Michelle Vosberg, our archivist, is with that conference right now. So I thought that was pretty cute to put that out there. They used one of our images. So thank you for listening, and I hope I haven't taken too much of your time, but I'm happy to take questions.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. Another great job. The only counselor that's asked at this time is Counselor Bruno. I'll go to him first.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Stephanie. Again, the gold standard of annual reports, very good. Two things I took from your presentation was pivoting and leveraging. So you found a way in COVID to pivot and do things, and I think that's great. And you continue to leverage the Bell Marine sponsorship, which was a brilliant idea to then get people involved and then stay with you, and just fantastic. I did want to ask you one question about your report and kind of the future. Now that you've taken on this wider scope with culture in Roselawn, are we going to see in future reports, like right now it's the museum annual report, and there's not a whole lot yet in there about Roselawn, and I wonder in the future, given your role now, is that going to be part of that and part of the Roselawn future story?
Stephanie?
Through the mayor to Councillor Bruno, absolutely. So it's been 6 months since we expanded, not even a year. However, it's actually, I'm just trying to keep the momentum down because everybody's really excited about what the opportunities are, what we can do, and I'm making sure I get my ducks in a row and make sure I'm getting all of the legislation and the health department, etc. So that's been my focus, and we're there now in terms of the building itself. The setting of the goals that I was talking about, that's going to be vital. But you will see a very different annual report next year, which will be more inclusive. I don't like to think of Roselawn as any different than the tea room or the archives. We are them, but because there's going to be so much more happening, we're certainly going to be seeing a lot more of that in the report for sure. And I look forward to we have many partners that are really excited to be a part of that, and I'm just making sure that it goes methodically and we do it right the first time.
Thank you. We're had the opportunity to go with Tom Lannon for an inside behind-the-scenes tour of Roselawn parts I didn't even see in previous orientations, and just I can tell you, I think the director going over there and having a presence in that building and handing off the museum more, I just think, leadership-wise, optics-wise, energy-wise, and to integrate another group of volunteers is no small task, and so well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm glad you kept the Christmas pudding questions to none.
Retired those ones.
Any further questions? Councillor Beauregard.
Through your worship to Stephanie, excellent presentation, and I know that staff, the board, and the volunteers are very passionate and very active and are doing a great job. But I also have a question for you regarding the strat plan, the strategic plan, which you did discuss somewhat briefly, right? What's the timeline for that plan?
Stephanie?
Through your worship to Council Beauregard, we'll have all of our goals and objectives by the end of this year. So we have now just finished the first process. We've done the community engagement piece, but we left it open for a little bit longer just because of the way people are not able to get together in a big room. We're leaving those surveys up for the rest of this month. June and July, we'll see us start the staff, the curator, myself doing the goals. August we'll be a little busy with Canal Days, and then by the fall we'll be reviewing those. We're also coordinating with the library on our strategic plans to make sure if there is any cultural block that they're included in both of our plans. So we're coordinating that. So by December you will have the next 5 years in a nice beautiful document just like you saw here today.
And will that strategic plan be presented to council at some point in time?
If you wish, I'd be happy to.
I personally would like to see it, but
Yeah.
if you're saying December, that's going to be the next council.
Oh. Through your worship to Councillor Beauregard, I'd be happy to share. I'd be happy to come back in the fall and let you know where we are so that you can have an idea before the new council gets in.
Sure. Mark that down, Madam Clerk. Any further questions? Questions? Okay, comments.
Oh, the mayor's playing me again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Stephanie. You know, probably the biggest impact I had with the museum this past year was Remembrance Day, the hand-knit poppies on the fence. And I think that hit a lot of people, residents and people driving by, the same. Like it's a real somber effect on me. Mm-hmm. You know, like didn't get quite choked up. I got choked up a little bit, and it really made you think about what Remembrance Day is all about. So I do hope you will continue that program and even expand it throughout the city. I think it's a great initiative by somebody in the museum that was an idea, but please thank whoever it was from me, and really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
Through the mayor to Councillor Begu. Thank you for your compliment. Actually, the curator, who was the former assistant curator, was the lead on the design, but everybody was tying poppies that worked there. And I agree with you. It was very poignant, and that was another partnership. It was with the Niagara Falls Museum Poppy Project. So there were so many partnerships I wasn't able to mention them all. I'm really glad that you brought that one forward. And another one that's happening at the Pi Social is Through the Window Pane, which is an exhibit that features our volunteers and an artifact from their home. Because they weren't able to come in, we went and engaged them, did an oral history, took a photo of something from their home, and you can come and see it for the first time at the Arabella's Pi Social. And again, just that connection and making sure that everybody feels a part of the museum and a part of Port Colborne on a whole. So that was another thing. The poppies really made us all feel kind of together, and I had a lot of compliments on that.
Great, that was fantastic. Great comment. It was. Nothing further then, I don't see. Okay, duly moved and seconded by Councillors Wells and Bodner. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Stephanie, and all of your staff. Item 8.3 is Meadow Heights Subdivision Amending Agreement, Phase 2, Stage 2. The recommendation is that Development and Legislative Services Department Report 2022-115 be received. The Council approved the amending subdivision agreement to the Meadow Heights subdivision attached as Appendix A. The bylaw to authorize entering into the subdivision agreement for the Meadow Heights subdivision be approved, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the amending agreement and have the agreement registered on the title of the lands. I'll have Councillors Bruno and Danch move that. We also have from planning Ms. Landry and Mr. Schultz for this one for questions, and I'm going to go to Councillor Bruno.
Thank you. Certainly, this is good news that the next phase will be getting started. I've stood here before to talk about some issues that affected the neighborhood, both in phase 1 and in some of the construction in phase 2. I did have a chat with Mr. Schultz today. One of my concerns is that where the line is between the deposits that are put on a new section build and during the period of construction, when it comes to, certainly in the past, residents' complaints about how the vacant lots are the conditions that they're left in. And so I'm going to ask Mr. Schultz if he can delineate what is part of the deposit that we can enforce on the owner of the subdivision or of this agreement versus the contractor, if those homes are all bought by, like they are many times today, bought by an entity, and then they really have ownership. So I guess I'd like to know the line between when I have to, or we have to go to planning via the developer in this agreement, and when we may have to react to bylaw if there are any problems. So that's basically the crux of what I wanted to ask this evening, Mr. Mayor. So I don't know if if David wants to answer that, or David and the chief. Thank you.
Mr. Schultz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor Bruno. So the city, through this amending agreement, we do retain a security deposit for the completion of primary and secondary services on the new phase or new stage of the development. With that security deposit, the city will not release that deposit until we are satisfied that the phase that is built and the services that are installed are to the satisfaction of both public works and planning. So for example, if the boulevards are left in disrepair and aren't sodded properly, the developer will not receive any of the security deposit money for that part of the development. And just for council's reference, we do have the security deposit has been submitted already, and it is in the total of $612,000, which the developer, like I said, will not get back until the city is satisfied that the services are installed and the roads are able to be assumed by the city in a clean and tidy manner.
Councillor Bruno?
Thank you. Although I hadn't looked since last Thursday or Wednesday when I drove through there, one of the residents has reminded me that in the phase that is finished and been sold, there were 2 sidewalks installed that intersect with Apollo, and at the base of those where the accessibility plate is in the sidewalk, both of those stood either end of Oriole, intersection Apollo, still have some leftover equipment, at least there was. Perhaps bylaw could drive by. This is where I go with that. Where's the line? There's still the construction wooden barricades, a part of them that have been there all winter, and as I say, up to the middle of last week, part of them laying at either respective ends. So I'm guessing that was from the construction of the sidewalk, but if that's still the developer on phase 1, but it's those kind of things that I found that particular development have just had some shortcomings, and these aren't jumping on things when they happen. These are things that hang around for 3, 5, 6 months. I'm sure Frank has gotten calls. I get calls about it. So thank you for the answer. That clears up a lot for me, and I hope for the residents as to where we can come in using the security deposit or where bylaw comes in. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. Item 8.4, hybrid attendance model at meetings. Recommendation that the Development and Legislative Services Report 2022-116 be received. That council approve a hybrid attendance model at council, board, and committee meetings. The council approved an amendment to the procedural bylaw to include a protocol to stand when addressing council during council meetings, and that staff be directed to bring the amended procedural bylaw for approval at a future council meeting. I have Councillors Bruno and Clayliff moving that, and Councillor Bruno is the only one that's asked to speak to that so far. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. There are two issues here. One is, and I'm glad it was included in the report, we deal with it all at once. Once was the issue of standing at council meetings versus sitting. The whole idea that this is council, we can do that in committee. I would just put forward that, you know, a number of years ago when we went from council and committee being combined, our council meetings are every other week, and back in the day, the council meeting would be a half hour because you were ratifying the 2.5 hours that was done in committee. And so then we were, I believe we were sitting, but I just looked this evening, and during councilors' items and that whole half of the day is sat, and it didn't look unusual, and they all spoke eloquently, and they were seated. And on this half, I've sat and stood. Councillor Wells has. I just think that what we should be concerned about is not so concerned about process, but end result. And so I'd like to split this report out in two parts and hear my colleagues, but I would like to move that we do say seated. For myself, it is much easier to look down at my notes. We've really sat for 2.5 years, only it's been in our house, virtually not here. And I find that it's a lot easier not to lose your train of thought and the whole up and down thing. So I'd like to split that out at the end into maybe a separate vote, and I'd like to put forward a motion on that when it's appropriate, that we stay seated during council meetings. On the hybrid model, I'm very concerned that what we've said is in extraordinary circumstances, in the mind of the clerk, that's when you can be at home if you're ill, on vacation, you want to weigh in, that she has the unenviable task of trying to gauge what is extraordinary. And my belief is that you're elected to do a job. I don't feel there will be abuse of this. I don't like having to put the clerk in that position. I think it should be up to the councillors. And if there's abuse, I think the public will notice it. I think your colleagues will notice it. And I think the voters will notice it. And so on that, I'd like to separate that and move to that it is to the individual councillor. I still think there needs to be some order to this, and so that you do have to get in touch with the clerk 24 hours. I think that's a great thing ahead of time so that this doesn't become unruly. And if it doesn't work, as we all know, what a council puts into play, a council can change. So I think if there is abuse, we need to speak to that abuse and change the rules if we have to. But I'd like to hear what others have to say, but if we could come back and separate that, Mr. Mayor, later, that'd be fine. Thank you.
No problem. So on your second point, the clerk has comments on that. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. I concur with the councillor, and actually that's addressed on page 121 of the agenda. The intent is to delete the extraordinary circumstances only, which opens it up right to councillor individual decisions. So that has already been thought and included for your consideration this evening.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so it's out of there. Councillor Bodner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think on the virtual meetings, I think that's a really good choice because lots of times a counselor will work on a certain project for a long time before it comes to council. And what if unfortunately you booked a vacation and it comes to council? And this way, you'll be able to get in there and have your say on that particular thing that you've been working on for a long time. So I think it really does afford an opportunity for council then to really participate. And I kind of doubt whether anybody will abuse it. I think it'd stand out like a sore thumb if somebody was abusing it. So I'm all for that. I think it's a great option.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. So, Councillor Bruno, you've asked for paragraph 3, that council approve an amendment to the procedural bylaw to include a protocol to stand when addressing council during council meetings. So if you want to remove that, I've got Councillors Bruno and Kalaloff moving the entire motion as an amendment. Do you want to second his motion? On this?
No, I wanted to add something else.
Oh, on the. Yeah, okay, I'll let you go ahead before I bring his motion, or amended motion forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'll stand until we've decided this.
That's fine.
Okay. Through you, I would just like to add, we're talking about planned upgrades and additional technology. I really would like to add the addition of electronically recorded voting. I know that sometimes you can see some of the ways council votes on YouTube, but it isn't clear how everyone votes on every issue. And this is important to the voters. It's an easy thing to add. I don't think it'll be incredibly costly, but I'd certainly like to hear from staff on it. But while we're looking at other technology upgrades, let's look at that as well. That way we just have a button, we hit the button, our vote is recorded, and the public has a way to track that. Very important to them. That's it.
Yeah, just on that, Councillor. So when you're on a Zoom meeting, you can
Right.
vote electronically, people see it.
Yes.
But only for that instant. At the region, when you vote electronically at the region, it doesn't keep track after that, unless it's a recorded vote. After that meeting, unless you've looked at the list or where everybody is, you won't know the next day who voted for what. They don't keep that. Only on recorded votes do they keep everybody's vote. So it only may be an instant on the WeeStream, but after that it's not kept.
But if I can,
Well, I mean, it's kept electronically because they do keep the
if I
WeeStream.
can, they can still. Someone can be in charge of screenshotting the vote list, because I do see it come up in the region. It's always on the screen, and I know the public screenshots it. So I'm sure that one of us can do it, and Welland does too. Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just an important piece of information for the public to know how the councillors have voted on things. Because I know it's happened here very rarely, but I've seen it happen in others where councillors will deny what they actually voted. You need to be accountable. You did that, you take that. So I just think it's a really important thing.
Yeah, I only brought that up only because I did call out
Yeah.
a councillor that stated they voted one way when I knew they voted the other. But I called the clerk and they said we don't keep track of that unless it's a recorded vote. That's why at the region you always see a ton of recorded votes.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, anything to add to that?
Absolutely. We will look into the different options to satisfy that request. We won't require an amendment to the motion for that. What I'll do is include that in the amended bylaw when I bring it back.
Good, thank you, Councillor. Aside from Councillor Bruno's amendment, any further questions? Councillor Kalaloff, then Councillor Bodnar.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The reason, I just wanted to speak up and say, I am also in agreement with the councillors that have spoken in favor of seating, and for a little bit different reason. I know that we said that if you had a disability that you could sit and it would be easier. And I think that we have to be really careful when we say that, because there's times, you all know I had a vision problem earlier this year, and I couldn't read when I was standing up. I had to be seated. And it's not that it bothered me, but at the same time, I'm sure there will be counselors that won't want the public to kind of know, well, I'm sitting down because I've got some kind of a disability, whether they've declared it or haven't, or want people to know or not. So I think just in respect for people and their own health issues, I think it's a really good idea. That's all.
Okay, Councillor
Thank you.
Bodnar?
Thank you. I'm glad Councillor talked about that. As you know, I have a disability, and sometimes I can stand, sometimes I'd rather not stand. I wouldn't want to see, and I know council in the future could change this, but I wouldn't want to see somebody not run for council because they have something that, I know a friend of mine has tremors in the hands, and that's all they got. But to stand and hold a paper when you're, they wouldn't be able to do that. You know, I wouldn't be able to do that, but they wouldn't, and I'd hate to see that be a reason that they don't run, you know. And so there's a lot of things that could go into that. Back to the electronic voting, and occasionally, how do we deal with a councillor may not vote? And I know that's a no vote, right, if they don't vote. But how will that be picked up on the, just to put it in your thing to look at, how will that be picked up in the electronic voting? I don't need to know right now, I just need to, need to show that.
So Councillor, based on what we do at the region, is the fact that the clerk looks at because half of us are there with our hands up.
Yeah.
The other half are on Zoom at this point. They're not all together like we are.
Right.
She'll look at the screen and you'll either have an X or a red X or a green check mark.
Right.
If you have nothing, she'll mark you as a no.
Okay.
So in her
Yep.
count, you're a
Yep.
no. And then everybody in the room, she puts up and counts everybody's hand that's up,
Yep.
and then if it's against, then whatever
Yep.
hands are up for that. So she'll keep track, but if you don't vote, she'll mark it down as a no vote.
Sure, so we would follow that same
Should be, because
procedure?
normally that's how I
Okay.
do it.
Okay,
If I see Councillor Danch, let's
Yep.
say, not even put his hand up, he would be a no vote.
Yeah.
But if the majority still, it's carried, right?
yeah,
But if
Yeah.
it's a tie, then, then we gotta really discuss that, to make sure that he's not listening, or he didn't hear the question correctly, then we
Yeah.
could give him the chance,
Yeah.
do you vote yes or no?
because
So-
it can be an important piece of the puzzle, like you say, if it's a tie or something like that.
I
right?
didn't wanna pick on Councillor Bagu again. So I picked you. Yeah, so, but yeah, I mean, those could be ironed out, but the clerk's department will do it. It does work well, and that's with 32 people, so, well, 31 because the chair, but, yeah. I mean, it's a lot easier here, believe me. Yeah, so, okay. So, further questions on the entire motion, then I'll go to Councillor Bruno's amendment. So Councillor Bruno has Councillor?
Through your worship, just looking through the report, we're just referring to electronic, and in my mind, I think Zoom, but does that electronic also mean by telephone then too?
Madam Clerk?
No, it will definitely be through a Zoom room or Teams, a virtual where the visual is there as well.
Okay, and will that be defined in the bylaw?
Yes, I can ensure that is defined.
Okay. All right. Further questions? So Councillor Bruno moves to remove paragraph number 3. Councillor Clough, if you'll second that? Okay. Questions to that? All in favor? And that's carried. Yes, as amended. So now the main motion, which removes clause 3 as amended. Any questions on that? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay. This is item 8.5, the Holloway Bay Road ownership status. And the recommendation is that the Chief Administrative Officer Report 2022-95 be received for information. I have Councillors Desmarais and, Councillor Wells and Desmarais moving that. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 3 questions. I'm not sure whether with CAO Louis not being here tonight, I don't know who I would direct him to. Gary?
Mr. Long, yes.
Yeah. Excellent. Through you, Your Worship, through to Gary. The first question is maybe more of a clarification. We're speaking about the section of Holloway Bay Road from Michener down to the lake. Is there no impact on Holloway Bay Road north of that?
Mr. Long?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. I'm not sure if my colleague, the Director of Public Works, can maybe comment on that.
Mr. Cataluna?
Thank you. Through the mayor to the councillor. At this time, the report is only from the Michener Drain South. That is the information that was provided to us, discussed and analyzed, and this is the conclusion for that. If there are further clarifications that anybody else would like to put forward with regard to that ownership, we can discuss it then. But at this time, the information that was provided by the town of Fort Erie just identified from the Michener Drain South.
Okay.
Councillor, just on that, so in the report that came out of the in-camera meeting, which now we're bringing this forward to our public session, there is a paragraph in there that says, at the closed session meeting, the city solicitor was directed to endeavor to make a determination on the ownership of Holloway Bay Road north of Michener Road. At the time of the writing of the report, the information is not being received from the solicitor, so that is coming forward. So that was direction of council, so that'll be coming back to us.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for not picking that up.
That's okay.
The second question that I have is, in the report, it identifies that there may be some potential limited impacts to the residents. I was wondering if we've identified what those impacts might be and how we may mitigate or make them go away.
Mr. Kalamura?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, there is a mitigation here with regard to that because we did send out the letters of understanding for the residents in that area. So there is I guess a minor inconvenience, if you want to put it that way, about understanding of the ownership, and then they would be calling the town of Fort Erie for anything physically on that road right of way. So it is a little minor inconvenience with regard to changing that mindset and that understanding. So with that, that is the only one that I have thought of.
Councillor?
All right. I was wondering what might happen if they don't get the service that they expect from Port Colborne, from Fort Erie, and if they may call in regard to some of the issues, or if they have some issues that are related to, let's say, drainage, for example, which is in their back, not on the Holloway Bay Road, but it's into the back of their properties, because the Point Habano drain cuts right across from Pleasant Beach Road. So with regards to that, and we also have the fire lanes that are down there, and the people in Port Colborne. So if those people have some concerns or questions, and they, I guess the communications, if they try to go to Fort Erie, and Fort Erie turns around and says, no, it's not our problem, it's Port Colborne's problem, and Port Colborne turns around and says, no, it's not our problem, it's Fort Erie's problem, what action can the residents take? How can they go about to get that addressed?
Mr. Kalamura?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, as noted in the report and the discussions, that the Fort Erie has the ownership of the road right of way. So that is in the front of those properties, just like any other road right of way. If there are any issues beyond that towards the Port Colborne side, that is something that they would be calling the city of Port Colborne for, just as they do now, just as any other residence does. So again, it is just speaking to the right of way only. So anything beyond that is for them to call the city of Port Colborne, as they do now.
Okay. One last question. The letters went out on May the 16th, and I was wondering if there's been any feedback from the residents to date.
Kaluta?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of any of the feedback. I'm not sure if the CAO's admin assistant had anything, but nothing has come to me or nothing has been brought to light since just before the CAO went on vacation. Nothing has come in.
Madam Clerk, anything coming to you? Okay. We'll make sure Gary tells Scott to address that to council once he gets back. Have you heard anything?
Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I think the biggest issues are snow clearing, parking, general maintenance of the road and ditches that they're gonna have to call Fort Erie on because that's within their 66 feet. But as I always tell people, call City Hall. We can get either the CAO or the mayor to get a hold of Fort Erie and try to get that fixed. But usually the CIOs work well together, or Public Works departments from Public Works to Public Works. So call our CSRs and they'll put it in touch with our directors or CAO's office and they can go from there. Correct? Okay, thanks. Yep. You're all set then, Councillor? Good, thanks. Councillor Clayloff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Kalamudou, do you know at this point, I know that those letters just got sent out, I think on the 19th. Have we had any response or any calls from the residents of that area? Any concerns expressed by any of them?
No, that's what Councillor Walls just asked.
Oh, I'm
No.
sorry. I didn't realize that he meant that since they've gone out now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Not yet. And if Scott has received anything, Gary will make sure Scott gets it
Okay.
to council when he gets back.
Even though they just went out, I think we probably even would have heard from some of them by now if there were any grave concerns.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Any further questions? Councillor Bruno?
So I'm just wondering, to Councillor Wells' point, can we embed those notes in the CSR screens? So if they ask you for your address and your, 342 Holloway Bay Road, automatically the CSR knows that, based on the nature of the complaint, that's Fort Erie, rather than just, a note. If it's embedded in the system, that's probably the way it's handled in other joint jurisdiction issues.
Yep. Mr. Long, you can have that done. Talk to Jonathan on the first floor and, yep. Okay. So Mr. Long will work with Jonathan on the first floor. Okay. Further questions? Councillor Bodnar.
Yes, I think you said it very well, where our staff will work with Fort Erie, but during this transition, it's going to be kind of hard for the residents, I assume, and I'm sure our staff will be, willing to go to the people in Fort Erie if they aren't getting results from, because I know Harry and I are probably going to get a couple of calls saying, we paid taxes to you guys, you figure it out for us, or something like that, right? And so, and that's fair,
Yeah.
but it's good to know that our staff will be liaising with Fort Erie's to really work it out. Well, maybe in another couple of years, there won't be such a big deal, but if there's a comfort level with that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So the next is item 19.4 under correspondence items. This comes in from the United Way. I'm writing to you on behalf, it was addressed to myself and members of council. I'm writing to you on behalf of the United Way Niagara regarding our Period Promise campaign and the associated work to increase access to menstruation products to vulnerable populations and address period poverty in the communities where we work. There is a motion within this, but I'm going to let Councillor Desmarais bring this up, and I'll ask Councillor Clayloff if he'll second this. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion reads that the City Council directs staff to provide a report regarding the cost and implementation of providing city facilities, including recreational spaces and libraries, working with the homeless, street-involved, and low-income and vulnerable girls, women, transgender individuals, and non-binary people access to free menstrual products in a manner that reduces menstrual stigma. and that the city endorse the United Way period promise policy as a locally built solution that promotes equality, inclusivity, health, well-being, security, and dignity in Niagara.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
And
Comments or questions?
Thank you. I do have a few things to add to this. There are several municipalities in Ontario and actually worldwide. There are many communities stepping on this bandwagon and understanding the importance of reducing period poverty. Beyond belief, it just really goes to the health of the general population for one thing. But it's also a way of being a very open and hospitable city. So if you're a city that is bent toward tourism, this is an extra piece that makes a big difference to have washrooms that are fully usable and stocked with all the things that are needed. We provide toilet paper and paper towels. This is just one more thing that needs to be looked at. I would like staff to look at doing it in a way that gives us an option of paid products, meaning dispensing machines, and also free products, so that we can take a look. There's some facilities that lend themselves to free products. There are other facilities that lend themselves to paid products. We may want to look at doing that sort of thing. Let's look at all the options, see what we can do, but by all means, maybe following the city of Hamilton, they're already a step ahead of us on this. They've got a lot of things in play. Let's get on with it and do some more to do this, as well as our business community. They can step on. There's Moontime Sisters, Help a Girl Out, Tampon Tuesday. There are different ways for businesses and groups within the community to step on board and be a part of this movement as well. But it goes to the general health of the population and to being a more hospitable city. So I put that in front of you and hopefully.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Mr. Long, with regards to this, and I know Mr. Bowles is obviously off ill this evening, timelines for this coming back? Do you have a kind of a generalization of when this would come back to us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council, I think staff could endeavor to bring back a report outlining the estimated cost of this initiative and how it would be implemented through our city facilities. I think we could undertake to bring back a report for either the last meeting in June or the first meeting in July. Would that be acceptable to Council? Councillor,
you're fine with that? Councillor Clayliff, you're fine with that? Okay. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. There are no motions this evening. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. Item 19.1 is the minutes of the April the 20th Port Colborne Historical Marine Museum. Councillor Beauregard and Councillor Danch, if you could move that. Are there any questions to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Bylaws. I'm going to separate this, Council, because we have one conflict. Councillor Beauregard with item 20.1. If I could have Councillors Bagu and Bruno move 20.1. Questions on that bylaw? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Item 20.2, if I could have Councillors Beauregard and Bodner move that one. Questions on 20.2? All in favor? That's carried. Item 21, confidential items. This is, if I could have Councillors Danch and Wells move that Council do not proceed into closed session in order to address the following matter. 21.1, Chief Administrative Office Report 2022-107, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. So ladies and gentlemen, those are watching at home, that ends the public portion of our meeting. We will not be coming back on WeeStream when we come out of in camera. Please enjoy the rest of your week and stay safe.